Time to take action, Game Devs. Tony Chan here, and welcome to episode 80 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with the best people in our industry every Wednesday morning. If you need motivation and tactics for a successful gaming career, then this is the podcast for you. Now let's chat with today's future guest, Teddy Bergsman. Teddy, it is a game time. Are you ready?
I am.
Yes, he is the CEO of Quixel, which is the world's largest scan library. Now, these scans include like vegetation, debris to nature environments all across the globe. And I highly recommend you check out his website because it's absolutely stunning with all these different textures that's just clean and beautiful. So, but first, Teddy, go ahead and give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Hey, my name is Teddy. I've been into computer graphics for, I guess, almost all of my life. My stepmom was a computer graphics artist. So I guess my first encounter with video games and graphics was when I was around 9. She took me to her office, and I guess it just had a very profound effect on me to kind of see, the behind the scenes on how games are made. And so I started, really like pestering her and her colleagues for the longest time, just teaching me teaching me all of the cool softwares that they had. And luckily she had a really nice computer back home. So I could, sit in my spare time and just play with all those tools. And that's basically all I did, like every single day. I think I wasted most of my childhood in front of the computer, but it was a ton of fun. I remember so clearly. It felt like taking the way you played with toys, but to the next level. It was so much fun, and I started getting into photorealism after a while. I thought that was super fascinating, like how you could take real world objects and put them in the computer. And I started experimenting with scanning techniques and trying to kind of build my own basic scanners. And I guess the first one wasn't really a scanner. It was a bucket of water, and that water was just mixed with black paint. And I would lower things into that bucket and film that process, and then you could take each slice of those frames and compute basically a height map, and then you would get geometry and you would get the basic textures. And I thought that was like, oh, super cool. I could actually do something with the computer, could take something from the real life and put it in there. So that kind of got me so fired up, kind of on a trajectory where I every day tried to just find new ways of scanning and digitizing things around me. But then when I was 19, I was recruited by a Swedish studio called Starbreeze Studios. I knew a little bit about them at the time, not too much though, but they did some really cool games at the time, especially one which was called The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay.
Love that game.
Oh, it was so cool. Mm-hmm. And it had exhibit in in one of the parts, which I thought was super cool. So I didn't hesitate. My life just changed kind of in an instant, because computer graphics to me was always a hobby. It was always just my passion. But then I thought, there are kind of real world jobs that you have to have. And so I was studying for a real world job and never had, kind of even the slightest hope that I would ever work in the games industry, because that was just way too cool for me, I thought. But they picked me up because they had seen some of my stuff online. Normal maps were really new back then, and I was doing a lot of normal maps, so I guess that's what caught their interest. They were really kind of bleeding edge when it came to graphics, which was exciting for me. So I had a phone call with them, and the next day I went to their office and had an interview, and the day after that I actually moved to the city where Starbreeze were located. So everything just changed in basically 2 days. Wow. It was really crazy. I remember when I walked out the door, because I was living at home with my mom at the time. I was 19, I had just turned 19, and I just realized as I walked out the door that like this is the last time I actually live with my mom, and it was very emotional for me. Like I started crying. It was a very life-changing event kind of thing. And I thought, I don't know how this is going to work out. I'm going to try it out for a while, but it just turned out that this was beyond amazing. Like it was going back to kindergarten in a sense, because you were just creative all day long. You would just sit in front of the computer, what I did anyways, just creating textures, models, environments, being super creative. And I got completely stuck. I wouldn't ever want to turn back. I worked there for a good while. I was there for about 4 years, 4.5 years, something like that. It was a super fun time. I started out as it was called a texture modeler. So basically a combination of texturing and modeling. After a while, I started to kind of introduce some ideas that I had. Because for all this time before Starbreeze, I had been making kind of tools for myself and scanners and things that I just thought were like production tools that really helped me be more efficient and creative. And I thought they didn't have anything like that back then. It was really like most workflows were quite manual. So I thought I'd show them kind of how to automate certain tedious things, like painting scratches or placing dirt or rust and assigning materials. All of that stuff just took a lot of time and wasn't really fun. But I had some tools that I made back home that I thought, well, okay, let's give this a shot. And they really liked it. In the end, I should say, because in the beginning, it was, I think a lot of people were, I guess, a little bit frightened by the thought of automation. And I was really naive, because I was still like a kid in a sense. I was like super enthusiastic and like, look at this. We can take something that used to take 3 weeks and we can do it in like 10 minutes. It's awesome. And I didn't realize that, someone in the company actually, spent those 3 weeks. He has, years of education, an extremely solid understanding of art and texturing. And I just didn't understand how that would affect that person emotionally, because I just showed like, you can automate a lot of that work. So there was a bit of a backlash actually. And I remember so clearly that I felt like an outcast for a long time. It was a really dark time for me, because I was so excited and I thought everyone else would be. Some were, I should say, but some took it, in the completely wrong way. I guess they started like fearing for their jobs. I guess over the next year or so, I just kind of went back to the drawing board a little bit and tried to not approach things from just a pure automation perspective, but like thinking about, well, so we're all creatives. We don't want to automate everything. We want to, wield this power in a creative way. So I started making kind of a tool out of it that you could completely control, and with input from all the artists in the company. And this essentially became my full-time job at Starbreeze, just developing these production like art tools. Eventually, like it turned around and people were like super excited, because we all realized that all of a sudden we can create more art because we don't have to focus on the tedious things. We can just focus on the creative side, like being super creative with designs, being a little bit more free with iterations, polish gets a lot more attention, etc. So that journey for me was, I think it was like life-changing in a sense. It was really important to somehow understand that something that is frightening really does have potential and will make a change. So with that, I got more and more, I guess, interested in how does the rest of the industry look, because I'm just in my corner here in the north of Sweden.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world, they probably operate in a way different way. But I started realizing that it was actually it was actually the same everywhere else. The processes were still quite manual. I mean, the games industry is very young still in comparison to other creative industries, and so the tools were not as evolved. This was, almost 10 years now. So it kind of dawned on me that I really would like to try some of my other ideas, but to try them on a kind of a global scale, in a sense, because it was so appealing to me to be able to work with companies all over the world and to get insights into pipelines and kind of just the idea of maybe someday being part of the bleeding edge and looking forward and trying to work out like the new workflows for the next generation of games, etc. That was so exciting to me, and so that seed was kind of planted and started to grow in my head. As I mentioned before, I was so passionate about scanning, and that was kind of another thing that I realized. Okay, so scanning is not commonplace at all in the games industry, mainly because back then it was like all just laser scanning, and you just got really crappy kind of geometry and no textures or anything like that. So it was really frowned upon. But I was more into like materials and how can we scan just like surfaces and reflectance, and how can we make them look super realistic in the computer? And that's what I had focused on since I was like 14 years old. So I thought maybe it would be useful for others if there was actually like an easy to use database of scans of like every type. So be it like natural scans, organic scans, or be it hard surface scans or urban scans, just a vast library that would become kind of like the platform of content that anyone would use. Like even if you're just a student or if you were a hobbyist like I was, you should be able to have kind of the same capabilities as the AAA production teams out there, the 300 plus employee companies who produce the big games. My vision was that the graphic fidelity should not really matter. You as a single person should be able to create something on the same level. And that's kind of, I saw scanning being key there, because there's no truer way of capturing the real world and like real world reflectance. I remember so clearly at Starbreeze, we had a lecture by this super awesome art director who worked at Valve called Victor Antonov. And he spoke about the importance of reflectance and the importance of materials feeling right, no matter if you're a stylized game or if you're a super contemporary photorealistic game. Just materials feeling the right way is so important. Like if you go to see a Pixar movie, even though it almost looks painted, the materials just feel right. And that I kind of took to heart and really wanted to turn into a library for everyone. So yeah, that's how the idea for Megascan started forming. I was still at Starbreeze, and it took another 1 or 2 years before I kind of dared to take the leap. But this, yeah.
Wow, yeah. That's an incredible journey. Like, you were obsessed with scanning, and it led you to all these different avenues, and now you're helping out the globe by giving us this tool to like help make our workflow better. And it looks amazing, by the way. Once again, y'all got to check out the website, because the materials that he scanned are. Let's talk about that real quick. So, Megascans, can you tell us a bit more about how that works? Just to break it down a little bit for us.
Sure. Yeah. So Megascans essentially is the world's largest scan library. So it contains 3D scans, surface scans, vegetation scans, decals, brushes. Just anything you could imagine that's scan based. We started Quixel around 7 years ago, and from day one we've been scanning essentially. So for 7 years we've been every day on 4 continents, just scanning, and building this thing. And it's all actually based on the same type of technologies. I started inventing when I was a teenager, and then they evolved, and they're continuously evolving. So we're using 12 different internal technologies to scan all this stuff, and we constantly build new versions of these technologies. Basically, scanning hardware that we ship out to all corners of the world. And the service is so much more than just the scans. It's all physically based and 100% standardized. So no matter the pipeline, and no matter the industry, like whether you're in games or you're in film or ArcVis or automotive, the scans just work the same way. So one super important aspect is ease of use, because working with scan data can be complex and daunting. It's so many layers, so many different maps just for a single material. So it's got to be easy to use. Otherwise, you're just wasting time at the end of the day. So standardization is one part of that, but then also integrations is another part of that. So we're trying to integrate it with kind of all of the major applications and engines like Unreal 4 or Unity 5 or 3D Studio Max, Houdini, Maya, Cinema 4D, etc. And we also try to build kind of an ecosystem of creative tools around it, so that you can be just super creative with the scan data, so that you're not kind of locked down with what a scan is. You can just bend it into any shape you want. You can make it into anything you like. You can take any number of scans and just mix them together, create something new, or just completely change the properties of a single surface, etc. So I guess that's in essence what Megascans is. And you subscribe to it. So you have access to it on a monthly basis or a yearly basis. And it's an online service. I guess that's it.
Yeah, it sounds really flexible and easy to use from what you're telling me. And I guess the best way to know is just to try out your sub-game, though. So you just got to go and try it out. And okay, now let's take this on a more personal level. And you mentioned that when you were creating this tool at Starbreeze, it started creating like a bit of a distance for some coworkers. Can you dive deeper, if you don't mind, into like the worst moment of your career?
Oh, sure. Don't mind if I do. I'd like to relive traumas. No, for sure. So I think I was around 20 at the time. I had created this tool for myself when I was doing some freelance work when I was 17 or 18, which was a texture automation tool. You basically had a mesh and a color map, and that was it. That's all you needed. And then the rest of the materials, the textures, they would be automatically generated. So by analyzing the geometry and the curvature of the geometry, the convexities and concavities, etc., you could figure out where scratch is supposed to go, where's dirt supposed to go, where's rust supposed to go, etc. And also based on the color maps, you could figure out, okay, so the red is supposed to be a metal, the blue is supposed to be a rubber, and it would just automatically apply those materials and then age them, just depending on some input that you set. And I thought that this was it was super useful to me, and maybe it was useful to others. So after a little bit of time, I introduced it to my coworkers at Starbreeze, and initially, the few people I showed it to, they were saying to me that, oh man, you gotta show this. And so I showed it to the upper management. So kind of the producers and the CEO, and they thought, oh man, let's take a deeper look into this. Maybe you can do a presentation for the company. And I took that super seriously. I thought, okay, I'm gonna try to do my best here and just show everyone this new workflow. So I went into, I tried to approach it from kind of a very data-driven, systematical, robotic way of going into kind of our planning system and looking at, okay, so these are the assets that took the longest time, and trying to figure out why. And so is the tool applicable here? Okay, yes, it is. Then let me download those assets from our Perforce server, and I'm gonna just run these guys through the tool and see what kind of output we were getting. And so the entire presentation was basically me running through a few different types of assets, like characters, spaceships, weapons, and some props, and showing kind of before and after. So the manual version and the automated version. And that didn't go well. I mean, it didn't go down too well because, again, I was stepping on so many toes that I didn't even realize. Like, I was way too naive. And in my head, it was just so like evident that, you know, this is the way forward. Like, this is the way we should approach things. Like, everything that can be automated should be, so that we can continue to explore our creativity and just grow as artists. It was never, you know, let's automate things so we can fire all of the company.
Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of the feeling that started emerging, and so it was met with a lot of resistance. It truly was. And some people took me aside afterwards and like, Teddy, what the F are you thinking? Like, I spent a month on this, and, you know, I put my heart and soul into it, and then you just demoralize me in this in this public way. And I had never even crossed my mind. So I was so sad because I really wanted to kind of do my friends and coworkers a favor by showing them kind of this tool, but in reality I just hurt their feelings, and it's just against everything that I stand for. And so I took it really hard, and it took me a good while to kind of bounce back mentally from that. But really, what ended up happening was I just started talking and communicating with every single artist in the company, just trying to understand their truest needs and the things that they really didn't like about their job, what things would they want to automate, etc. And I started building kind of a new tool set around that. And I think that collaborative process was healing for me, and it was also strengthening for kind of the team spirit for one, but also it helped justify the product in a sense, because it was something that everyone contributed to. And this experience was key to everything I did ever since. So every single tool that I've done, every single service, it's been all about just being deep down into the trenches with the artists and understanding the needs and just trying to deliver on those needs. I can't take credit for much of the work I do because there are greater minds behind it. So it was a year of despair, but it grew into something very helpful for me.
Yeah, you never meant any ill intent. You just wanted to help, you know, make the workflow better for the game. So, you know, it just takes out the tedious out of it, like you said. And what do you want to make sure a game devs take away from that experience? Like, say, like they find a new way to make things really, really good, but then it just, I guess, like you said, it steps on other people's toe. Like, what can game devs do, or what do you want to make sure they take away from that experience?
I think that's a really great question. From my personal experience, and I've been doing this for 10 years now, I've never seen a single person being fired over a tool helping them out or making their work faster, etc. Not a single time. And I've worked with basically all of the gaming companies and the film companies in the world, and that just doesn't happen. But I think that's what scares people, and that is what makes people kind of shy away from more revolutionary type tools. So maybe just my advice would be to embrace it and adopt it as early as you can. Get ahead of the curve. Yeah, just help the industry move forward, because we're all in this together. We all strive, for the same things. We all want to create the best games, the best movies, the best graphics, the best experiences. And we have to kind of not regard each other as competitors, but, you know, as a collaborative. And I guess that's what I would take away from it.
Yeah, Teddy, if you came to me with a tool that helped me with my workflow, I would gladly accept it and thank you for that. And that be like, I can't believe someone took you aside and be like, hey man, why are you doing this to me? You demoralize me. I would have been like, man, you're helping me out so much. I really appreciate it. I would have been so thankful.
But I have to say, I mean, I understand that perspective fully.
Yeah.
And I think it's also different. Like if you're new in the industry, then I think you have a much more, you have a different approach to things. Whereas if you've been in the industry, you're a senior artist, you've helped ship like 5 games, you know your stuff. And then this, 19-year-old kid says, well, I think I can do it better. Then obviously you'll feel like who's this kid?
Yeah.
Like, but also, I would never call anyone out for taking me aside and saying those things, because they were so valuable to me. And I really do think that, I think as an engineer that I've eventually evolved into from an artist, that's something that's so important for engineers to understand, that we have to have such a tight communication with artists to be able to help move this industry forward and to help people be more creative than ever. And I think the way that I approached it from the beginning was completely wrong, but something that I've learned along the way. And I think that's maybe a lesson to engineers. Just listen more to the artists and make sure you meet their needs before you meet yours.
Yeah, I completely understand. I have empathy because, especially someone new that's coming along and then they have this new tool and they're going to try, you're basically changing a lot of their workflow. So I completely understand the other side as well. And speaking of the industry, what have you changed your mind about in the last few years and why?
So I've always had a very strong vision of what I want to create and how I go about creating that. But something that I didn't anticipate along the way was external factors affecting my mental state or my productivity. One of those things being a competition. Competition was not something that I ever even thought about, because I was always just thinking about how can I create the best tool and how can I be on the bleeding edge, essentially. That was so interesting to me. But then, as I had released a couple of tools, then along the way, competition came. Competition that went after the exact same artists and then essentially doing it better. And that was, I think, really hard for me to, I don't know, it was really hard for me to accept that. So the things that I do are no longer the best, for instance. I mean, that sounds really, that sounds self-centered, but for me it was actually really important to know that what I delivered was the best, so that I could properly stand behind it and really feel proud of the work that I did, etc. But when competition came along and did it better, it really affected me negatively, I would say, because I've never done products before. I've never been through this thing before, and but eventually I started embracing competition, because competition, I realized, just helped everything just be better and better and better. Both the things that I did, but also the things that competition did. We feed off each other. And eventually you will both kind of find your niches. And at the end of the day, you will help each other to move things forward. So for me, who's just, for almost all of my life been thinking about tools and ways of doing things in a more fun or efficient manner, I'd say that is the biggest takeaway, to embrace competition.
Yeah, I love that. You made it. You, instead of taking it negatively, you starting to see it in positive light and how you can make your product even better than theirs. And in the end, of course, y'all are both pushing the industry forward. And it sounds like you're just obsessed with, making the best tool. And I'm curious, like, what do you think was one of the best investments you've ever made? And it can be investment of money, time, and energy. Like, what was that investment that just fuels this obsession to make the best tools?
Oh, I think our first ever hire, that was the first time I ever, actually invested money into something. And our first hire was a super talented guy named Victor Öhman. He's a 3D artist, and he was very active within our community, just using the tools and creating all these super cool graphics. And before like bringing anyone else into the company, programmers or marketeers or what have you, I wanted to bring Victor in. Just someone who constantly uses the tools, gives feedback on a daily basis, and just also shows the rest of the world what's kind of possible with the tools. Because the more I program, the less time I have for art, etc. And he kind of filled that gap. And he was so important for my well-being in a sense. We fed off each other. And he made me more creative and vice versa. And I think that really helped kickstart things in terms of investments. Then I should actually state that when we set out to build Megascans, we knew that, this is going to be a big challenge because, it's going to require hardware. It's going to require teams across the globe because we really want to scan the world. But we had no money. The two of us who started up Quixel, me and Vakar Asim, who I've met at Starbreeze, and we found that we worked so well together. He was so passionate about electronics, as much as passionate as I was about scanning. So we really worked super well together. So when we started Quixel, it was us two. He went to Pakistan, where he's from, and I joined him for a brief while, and he actually helped build all of the hardware for Megascans. He's a super talented guy, and also super talented in terms of building teams. He already had a company in Islamabad, an outsourcing company that was actually doing quite well, and so he was able to quickly build a small team to help build these scanners and to help start scanning and just establish the processes. And so I went back to Sweden and I started programming all of these tools, because we realized if we're gonna even think about surviving, we have to start generating some revenue so that we can pay for all of this. And that's actually how I got into commercial tools programming. So that's what I did for the first couple of years. From an external perspective, I wrote a number of art tools with help of Victor, who just constantly gave me feedback, who did cool art with the tools and kind of helped push me to add cooler features, etc. And those tools became really popular, and I'm so grateful for it, because that helped us stay completely self-sustained in a way and help grow organically to build the scanning service that was kind of the vision from the very beginning. So I'd say Victor was key, and building the tools were key, a key investment into making Megascans happen.
Let me ask you this. How did you find Victor? Like, what was the process of hiring him? Like, did you have to go through many candidates, or you just find the right person right then and there?
Yeah, actually, I think maybe our company is a little bit unorthodox in the way that we rarely, have like 10 candidates and then we pick one. From my perspective, it's always been about which are the people who really gives or breathes life into the company, gives you energy. And Victor was one of those guys. He was a super cool, energetic, talented artist, and he was very active in our forums and in the community. So he started sending me things privately that, look at this is what's in the works, do you like it, etc. And I was just blown away every time. And I just knew that as soon as we had a little bit of money, Victor is the guy. Victor is the number one choice. We just have to have him in the company because he will just help us grow and help us understand artists even better, etc. So it was quite organic in that sense. We just, like a year before Victor was hired, we were just chatting every day. He was just showing me stuff, and we were talking about the tools and how they could be improved. And we also just had a lot of like personal chats, just getting to know each other really well. So he felt like a true friend. And that feeling has remained throughout, and I think we've only grown as friends. And I think that's so important when you build a company, that you have that friendship. Because one thing that you learn is that there will be extremely tough times. Whether you like it or not, there are going to be road bumps, there are going to be incredible challenges. And more than anything, you need that positive energy in the company, so that when one guy is down, there's another one to pick him up. And you all help each other. And the same applies to all of the game developers out there. Some of the best ones, they are the best of friends. They're a super strong team on many levels. So I think that was very important. And yeah, key decision, a key factor behind the decision of hiring Victor.
Yeah, and I think this is a good takeaway for other game devs. Is like. Victor, he already ahead of time already started collaborating with you in a way of the art and showing you things, and other game devs, so they want to get into other companies or looking to get into other companies, they should start doing the same of being active in the community of that company. So I think that's a great way to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah. If I would give one advice to aspiring artists out there, it's just be visible all the time. And also listen to advice. Throw your stuff out there. If it's not good, it's fine. Like, you have to realize that even though you're starting out and maybe your art is not the greatest, there is immense talent out there who are actually willing to share some of that experience with you and help you, grow. And they critique your work. So just take that seriously and stay positive throughout. I mean, most feedback, especially if your heart is in something, it's going to hurt. But don't let that stinging feeling, bring you down. Turn it into something positive. Try to materialize it. Try to create better art or whatever field you're in. So definitely throw yourself out there, be positive, and listen. I think that's really important.
Yeah, just remember me and Teddy being your positive energy game devs. We're there to keep you pushing forward. Now, so the game industry is booming, and the technologies, and with your tool as well. What are you most excited about today in the game industry?
Oh, there's so many things. I think one exciting thing that really helped change the graphics side of things was physically based rendering. It started coming out like 3 years ago. It was a really unconventional way of creating art, because as an artist myself, the process was always whatever works. But with physically based rendering, pipelines started to homogenize in a way. They started to become standardized, and that's not necessarily a boring or bad thing. It just helps everyone stay on an even keel, in a sense. It helps industries to converge. Like, if you came from the movie industry, your workflow used to be way different than if you were a games artist. Now it's actually not that different at all. It's even not that different to ArcVis or advertising or any type of artistic graphics industry, because we're starting to have the same standardized, unified workflows. And that allows for kind of a cross-pollination, in a sense, of experience And I think that is incredibly exciting because it helps us thrive at a much greater pace. And just look at the games that were released, were announced just the other day at the Games Award.
Oh yeah.
Mind-blowing stuff. And much of the graphics that we see is made possible by this, standardization. So I think that, and also one of the more exciting, maybe more futuristic aspects would be AI. I think AI will have a significant impact on our daily lives as game developers and creators, because we're going to be able to. I think we're going to be able to make huge leaps in terms of technological advancements, both when it comes to graphics, but also when it comes to gameplay. AI will help us to produce art on a much more abstract level. But this is still a couple of years down the road, I think. But that excites me. Just the notion of something that's almost too hard to understand the effects of. That it's I don't know, it's tickling.
Yeah.
in a sense.
It's really exciting, especially with AR and VR. Like, I'm very curious at how art is going to look, or how the graphics is going to look in those terms. Like, being in a realistic world, that's going to be insane. Just picturing something like that. Let's talk about this. Like, I want to know, what was that one game that influenced you the most, and why?
Half-Life. I think, number one, because it was such a captivating experience. It was also the most beautiful gaming experience I've ever had. Before Half-Life, the only 3D games I had really played were Hexen or Duke Nukem or Doom. And Half-Life just took things to an entirely new level. But also because of its modding community. That changed things for me immensely, because when I was a kid, the only thing I did, was computer graphics. And one outlet was modding. And so Valve had built this really friendly modding community and opened up all of their tools to just everyone. And so I worked on a lot of mods throughout my childhood, my teens. Like the ones that I'm most particularly fond of were, for instance, there was this mod we made that was called Sven Co-op, which it kind of took Half-Life and made it into a cooperative experience. They Hunger took Half-Life and made it into kind of a zombie shooter. And then it was actually fun, because when Half-Life 2 was released, they paid tribute to They Hunger with a level called Ravenholm, which was basically They Hunger but Half-Life 2, which was so cool to see. And big props to Valve, because their artists, they were always there. Like if you needed feedback on anything, they would happily give it. If, for instance, there was concept art that you drew inspiration from, maybe there were more angles of that concept art. And I remember having conversations with their concept artist Ted Bergsman, who would happily send you stuff, and that was super fun and important for me.
Yeah, being a part of a community like that, it's like you're being around like-minded people in a sense, but online.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, yeah, awesome. The show isn't over yet, Game Dust. Before we go into the lightning round, if you enjoyed the episode and want to hear more inspiring stories, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Overcast. So, Teddy, I will be asking you quick questions, and you'll be giving us more valuable information in return. Are you ready to crush the lightning round?
Okay, sure.
What was holding you back from joining the game industry?
I think the sense that I had to do something real. I didn't feel that the games industry was a real industry, which was completely wrong. It absolutely is.
What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Insanity. I'm deeply committed. I can't let something go. If there's a bug that needs fixing, I'll I'll not eat. I won't sleep until it's fixed.
The obsession, I'm telling you, the obsession. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Be humble, I think.
Be humble. What's a great marketing tip to make yourself and your game stand out?
Well, don't speak for yourself. Let people who really do love what you do speak for it. I think that makes the biggest difference.
Oh, so you're saying let the players that play your game?
Well, for instance, if I can only speak from my own point of view, but when it comes to creating like tools and stuff like that, I never try to market them. I just try to do the best I can, and then if people like it, they are the ones who are then voicing it and sharing it with their friends and colleagues. Yeah,
that's a great way to do it organically. Let the players or the people that's using your tools spread the word of mouth. Yeah. What resources should we use to get started today? Like, of course, we got to use your website. Like, what other resources should we use to learn more about materials and textures and scans and how we could implement that into our game?
Well, I think some softwares that I would really recommend is Unreal Engine 4 and Unity 5. If you want to get into, how to work with materials, how to start to understand materials, see them under different lighting conditions and just playing with them, playing with shaders in simple ways. If you want to do like personal work, I would really recommend Marmoset Toolbag 3. An awesome piece of software for doing presentations. This is the software that everyone essentially in the games industry is using to create their portfolios. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out. Obviously, everyone knows about ArtStation. That's where you promote yourself and your work. It's a great community. Be active in that community. You can also apply for work in that community, which is a terrific service that Leonard, Theo, and the guys are doing to this community. And when it comes to just understanding materials, just spend a lot of time outside. Look at every single material, just inspect it, try to understand how light bounces off of it, how it interacts with its environment, how it deteriorates over time, etc. I think that's the key takeaway.
Well, what's the coolest material you ever scanned?
Actually, some of those we haven't released yet, but some of the coolest materials that I've scanned and that really opened my eyes up were metals. And I started scanning metals a long time ago, but then I started really understanding the physicality of materials, because you understand that metals almost they absorb so much light, and they do not emit any diffuse reflections. They only emit specular reflectance. And some of those materials just look so cool when you look at the individual maps. So yeah, a dirty metal, I would say.
Are some materials impossible or nearly impossible to scan?
It depends on the technology. But like if you have a BRDF scanner, you can almost capture any type of material. With more traditional scanning technologies like photogrammetry, you only capture diffuse light. Most of the time, it's going to be just a composite of photographs. If you're doing more advanced photogrammetry, you might be able to just capture diffuse information. But it really depends on the scanning technology. But there are some out there that can capture almost anything.
Wow. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. So this next question is a bit of a doozy. So take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to join and become successful in the game industry?
Wow. That's a big one. I actually think about that from time to time. But I think about it in terms of, what if I was 8 years old tomorrow and I could just relive my life? What would I do? And the thing is, I would do exactly what I have done up until this point, because I think one thing that I'm thankful to myself for is that I've tried to to follow through on my vision. And I think it's something that I really recommend others to do. If you truly have a strong vision, don't be afraid to pursue it. So I think it would take me almost just the same amount of time and grinding to reach where I am right now, because it does take a lot of time. Just be prepared. But obviously, I would maybe cut some corners. I would maybe get to know some people earlier, maybe distance myself from others earlier, or not worry about certain things that I was incredibly worried about in the beginning. But I don't think it would make a tremendous impact, to be honest.
Let me ask you this. How do you stay obsessed? How do you stay focused on that vision? Like for me, I just read down a note that I have every day and night. I just read down that my goal, or my vision. How do you stay obsessed with your vision? Like what keeps you going?
I think what helps keep me going is actually music. I play a lot of music just to calm my nerves when it's needed, or when I need to relax. But I think for me, I feel so very invested in this dream, in this passion, that I almost don't know what I would do if I didn't do this. And I think just that strong feeling of never wanting to give up. And if you do give up, you essentially give up all of you. Like it's such a defining thing for me. It defines me essentially. So I think that's something that's also, it's frightening, but it's also motivating. And also trying to constantly learn something new, constantly better technologies, or better myself in any way I possibly can. I think that's super exciting. Just try to discern where the industry is going, what new things are popping up, what can you learn, how can you incorporate that to become more knowledgeable, have more fun, be more creative. Just never stop learning, I guess.
Yeah. And how can you not be excited about being a part of the game industry? There's so many great things happening in it right now. And it's exciting times. And real quick, what music do you listen to?
I'm a bit old school. I listen to a lot of blues and jazz.
Okay. I love blues and jazz.
I think most of it boils down to my dad. When I was a kid, we didn't have an apartment. We just had a music studio. So I grew up in my dad's music studio, and I've been playing since I was a kid with him and his friends. And actually, before I got into the games industry, like all I did was either study or play music. It was my life. Now I don't have as much time for music, but I still spend at least a good 2 hours every day trying to just learn a new instrument or learn a new song or just relax with music.
Nice.
It's fun.
Awesome. We have reached the end. Go ahead and give us one last parting piece of guidance and how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you for this interview. It's a lot of fun. I am constantly online available. If anyone has any questions, you can find me on Facebook through the Quixel Tools group. I'm on there every day. Parting advice is don't stress it. Trust yourself. Be prepared for bad times. Know yourself and that you're gonna get through it. And just stay curious and stay excited and have fun. That's it.
Awesome. Teddy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And I could tell you're humble, but I know you're obsessed. So thank you for this energy, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you so much, Tony. Pleasure talking with you.
thank you, Game Dust, for listening. I really appreciate your time, and wow, it's really cool listening and learning about Megascans and how materials can make our game better. And so don't forget that knowledge is only potential power. Execution is the game. Go to GameDevLoadout.com and type in the number 80 in the search bar to find Teddy's episode for all the awesome show notes where you can connect with him and check out the resources that we talked about. Until then, keep on making great games. I'm Tony Chan, and I catch you next Wednesday on the Game Dev Loadout podcast. Peace.